Are your students raring to read, or are you reading them the riot act? Well, today we're evaluating 3 resources for primary literacy to help you in your classroom. They are an interactive pack that gives a modern twist to a fairy tale, a moving story about a child's escape from the Holocaust, and a programmable robot. So will these resources be acclaimed, or will our panel find their flaws? Stay tuned to Resource Review to find out. Joining me to recommend today's resources is Jill Budgell. Jill is an independent educational publisher and writer. On the panel, we have Kate Ruttle. Kate's Deputy Head Teacher and Senko at Great Heath Primary School in Suffolk. And we also have Barbara Conridge, Chair of NATE's Primary Committee. Welcome to you all. Thanks for coming. Jill, let's start then with your first choice of resource, and it's called Jack and the Beans Talk. What is this resource and why do you like it?
Well, I like it because it's brand new, it's fresh, it's vibrant, it takes a new approach, and it's essentially an ICT package, but you get a very substantial amount of teacher support as well in the teacher's book.
And what's it really designed for?
It's a Key Stage 2 package, although it does definitely have application for Key Stage 1 as well, because it's it's obviously based on Jack and the Beanstalk. But this is cross-curricular. This has huge cross-curricular application, and in the hands of a creative teacher and creative class, you could use this material endlessly.
Great. Well, let's have a look at this resource in action. We didn't have to climb the beanstalk, but we did visit Woodlands Junior School to see how teacher Catherine Wilson and her Year 2 class got on with it.
And what have we been learning about in literacy over the last few weeks, Sam? Jack and the Beanstalk is a resource that's very wide-ranging. There's an interactive story at the start that's based on the traditional tale Jack and the Beanstalk, and there's also lots of linked in resources. So who would like to come up and open Jack and the Beans Talk?
There once was a boy, and Jack was his name.
Hello.
His last name was Pot, and his mum's was the same.
We are going to listen, okay, and watch the story. The work we're going to do is all to do with the story. I think the package is very thorough. There's lots of resources that are linked to certain areas. What I used today, I think, fitted in quite well with what I've been doing in class recently. What's good about the resource is that you don't have to do what the teacher's manual tells you you can do. Because that would not have fitted in with what I was doing today. So I was able to use the resources that were there, the pictures, the characters, the story as a basis, and then do work connected with it.
3, 5, 4, 5.
I smell the blood of an Englishman. I think the children really enjoyed it, really liked the story. Certainly smiley faces.
Well, Jill, a very positive review from our teacher who seemed to be getting the most out of this resource. It does seem like it has many facets. Does a teacher have to do a lot of preparation before getting to grips with it?
It is a huge package, huge number of resources within it, but to pull it all together, I do accept it could take quite a lot of planning and preparation, and perhaps that's its weakness.
Kate, do you think it'd be worth it for teachers to really get into this resource?
I think this is the future of educational publishing. I think this is an amazing kind of view of how text can work and making the most of the interactivity. My personal issues with it are I'm not an enormous fan of the illustrations, and the other problem I have with it is the actual text itself. I don't think is a good enough text to justify and warrant all the work that you're asking people to do with it.
Barbara, what do you think?
I like a lot of what it does, and I actually quite like the illustrations, and I like the fact that they're moving. On the other hand, when you think of what an ICT text can do these days in terms of hyperlinking, going directly into music, video clips and the like, it could be a kind of missed opportunity because they have the resources in the resource bank.
No, I'm quite happy with the way it is because I think it's probably where most teachers are at the moment. I don't know that all teachers are happy with making use of the technology, though clearly many are. So I think because it's so enormous, it's quite useful to know you've got a resource CD and the poem CD and the print materials. I think it's the best of blended material. Okay. But certainly in the future I can imagine there will be more hot links, and perhaps that would be a way to tame the content slightly.
All right, well, thank you all very much. Now let's move on to Jill's second choice of resource, and this is an illustrated book called Erica's Story. Jill, very different from your first choice. Tell us about this one.
Well, this is as focused and narrow as the other resource was huge and broad, so I thought it would be a good contrast. It's an award-winning storybook called Erica's Story, and it's both non-fiction and leads you to believe it's fiction. The author tells the story of a small child, baby, being thrown from a train in order to save its life. And it's very powerful, it's very Key Stage 2, it's about life, chance, hope. It actually does have a very positive message at the end, but it's very moving, and I think it would need to be dealt with very sensitively in the classroom.
Well, let's see how some pupils responded to Erica's story. We went along to Endgame Primary School in Essex and eavesdropped as teacher John Manifold told the story to his Year 6 class.
Erica's Story is a very interesting book which is essentially about one child's escape from the Holocaust. This morning we used the book by, first of all, reading it and discussing the events of the Holocaust.
Now, what's this ghetto that she's talking about? Jack?
Then we focused more carefully on how the story changes from one place to another and from one time to another. I gave the children essentially a jigsaw, a table which outlined certain events in the book, where those events took place and when those events took place, and the children were asked to sequence the events from the story.
Now, you are going to arrange this table to show time changes and scene changes.
The story does relate to the national curriculum in several areas, I would say. Perhaps in terms of history, it deals with events from the 1940s, and perhaps in terms of PSHE, moral dilemmas.
It's gone a bit deeper, and he thinks it's something to do with emotion, the sadness and the colourlessness. I think that's a good point. But you will notice the
pupils loved it because it is, in a sense, a meaty story, even though it's so short. And they loved the high quality of the illustrations and the feel of the book. The physical appearance and the physical texture of the paper really adds to their enjoyment of it. At the end of the lesson, we had to go rewriting parts of the book ourselves. We tried to write sentences that might introduce the changes of time or place, and we tried to keep to the same flavour as the narrative.
We're getting the idea now.
The thing that I like about the book most is that even though it's about something which is so terrible, it's actually quite optimistic. It's about the Holocaust, but essentially it's about a child's redemption and a child's escape from the Holocaust and the way the child builds a new life.
Well, Jill, this strikes me as a very powerful resource for primary English, but what surprises me is that there's so little text. I mean, for a literacy lesson, there's not much to it.
No, I think the teacher that we saw explained it probably far better than I can. There isn't a huge amount of text, but there's a huge amount lying underneath each of the words, which is why I think, although this is a very difficult book to handle, it actually is very optimistic.
I mean, Kate, I don't know what you thought, but I find it's a difficult topic.
I think that the question is going to be all the way through, you know, what is the learning objective? And I think just simply in terms of literacy, pulling back from the power of the book, which could be used for so many things, I think, you know, I can think of so many learning objectives in the literacy strategy which that book could fulfil throughout the Key Stage 2 range and well into Key Stage 3.
And isn't that the essence of a fantastic book? If you can see so many ways to use it in a learning sense, but also it appeals to different people at different levels.
The book teaches its own lessons. That's what I love about it. It's, and why I'm so passionate about really high quality picture books is because they tell their own story, and because they are accessible on different levels, at different depths, for different people, at different times, and for all ages. That book is as much an adult book as it is a child's book.
Well, clearly a very powerful and popular resource. Now let's move on to Jill's third choice of resource. This is something completely different. It's Bebot. Now, Jill, let me just clear the table here. Tell us about this resource.
Well, Bebot is a bee, and he is an award-winning programmable floor robot. Very simple and clearly has many, many uses across the curriculum. I've chosen him because I think there are huge literacy learning opportunities.
OK, well, let's see how it works.
OK. Well, what you get in your pack is this one. You get 2 of these mats, plus one that's completely transparent, so you can make it your own, which is what I like. But we've got here the high street version of the mat, and I thought we might send Bebot up to the florist.
OK.
So we could have, as a group, we could have lots of discussion about how we're going to move him there. We're going to move him there in squares, so I'm going to move him 4 squares forward, and we're turning left into the florist.
Right.
So what we need to do is press 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to make him turn left and then move forward, and then we press go. And that's all there is to it.
So it's quite nice, you get a little beep when you press the buttons, you know what's going
His
on.
eyes flash, and you get the audio support, and you'll see that when he actually arrives at his destination to buy us a lovely bouquet of flowers, he will in fact give us a reward sound as well. And there it is.
Fantastic.
So the children get very excited about this, and I think clearly this has huge cross-curricular potential. But this leads us to have opportunities to talk about directional language.
And what age group, what year do you think it's best
Really
aimed
key
at?
stage 1, but I'm sure Kate might want to have something to say about the appeal of it to special needs groups.
I love it. It's very cheap, and I think it's an amazing resource. I am concerned that people might think that it would be a resource for teaching reading and writing, because, you know, if you take the literacy down very narrow, apart, you know, apart the big issue, the children will get so excited about the technology bit that the fact that you've put a word there and a word and there is irrelevant. The children are not actually going to learn about reading.
Right, OK. Barbara, final comment from you.
Absolutely disagree.
Oh, good.
Because I think, like as Jill said, it's what you do with the resource. And if you use this as a story-making tool, you have a story mat.
Yes.
You can dress the Bebot up. You can create his own story. He can go to different places. You have to give children something to write about. But as a resource in the classroom for telling a story and for linking cross-curricular work, I actually think it's very good.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot in this resource. Mixed response from the panel on our third one. But just to summarise, the 3 resources that we've looked at today are the Jack and the Beanstalk resource from Shoefly Publishing Limited, Erica's Story by Ruth van der Zee, published by Random House, and finally the Robot Bebot Starter Pack from RM plc. For more information about all of the resources that we've discussed here today, go to our website. It's teachers.tv/resource review, or if you want to, email us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. All that remains for me to do is to say a very big thank you to our panel, to Jill, to Kate and to Barbara. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.